Well, we're going to talk this morning about a very popular teaching within the Orthodox Church, and that is they talk about the new birth. They say somebody gets saved. Well, I always question from what kind of change is taking place in that individual. But Jesus was very, very clear about this, about the new birth. And he gave a teaching on it. I don't think that he set up a doctrine. I don't think that he set up something brand new. He said they should have understood this. They should have understood about a change. Now, if you go down to the Baptist Church or the Nazarene Church or the Methodist, well, some Methodists, people do what we call repenting. In other words, what happens is they will change. They will get a different concept of life. They will get a new concept of God. They go forward with a much more ease. They just get sick of the old life and they decide to have a new one. And that's good. And I have no problem with that whatsoever. Now the first thing that we see here is that people that Jesus is speaking to should be thinking about spiritual things. And Jesus said, this is a spiritual thing I'm talking about. He was very clear about that. Not just a physical thing that takes place. Now, anytime a mental thing changes in you, then an outward thing changes too. Don't ever be deceived by that. What you are inside of you is what you will be outside of you. That's the way it is. Maybe we like a second opinion. Maybe we don't like that plan. But nevertheless, that's what it is. Now, they understood Jesus' ministry to be from a higher source. They often said that to him. That he was of a higher source than the theologians of their time. You have to understand that the thinkologists of that day and age were totally different. I mean, they had people who, if you had a lawyer, it wasn't somebody who represented you in court. It was somebody who interpreted the law for or against you. Interpreted the law of Moses and then would try to bring it into everyday life. They didn't do much of a good job at that, I'm afraid. So these theologians that came along, they were into very physical things and were limited in their thinking. For instance, the law clearly taught that you could only go, I think it was, 7 miles from your belongings on the Sabbath day. So they figured this out. On Friday, they would move their belongings 14 miles. And so not only could they go 7 miles, but now they could go 14 miles. You see, kind of just getting into the thing, kind of making it work for them. I've talked to you before about what's going on over in Israel right now. I find it very interesting that a lot of people in Israel are not what we call Sabbath keepers. They call themselves Sabbath. They aren't. They don't keep the law. They're not particular. They're Jews, but they're just citizens, and they're not really interested in some law of the synagogue. But they're arguing about whether it's okay to press a button on the elevator on the Sabbath day, or to pick up the newspaper outside of their door on the Sabbath day, or to turn the stove on the Sabbath day. And on it goes and on it goes. Jesus dealt with this very clearly. And he said the Sabbath day was not created you for the Sabbath day, but the Sabbath day for you. See, you work the Sabbath day. It does not work you. Now, Jesus introduces a subject here this morning we're going to talk about that they were not acquainted with and that the theologians of the time appeared to know nothing of. Oddly, they didn't seem to get any kind of an idea of a change in life, a point where people's lives are changed. They didn't get that at all. I don't know why. Well, I guess I do know why, because the law was so strict. And it really had nothing to do with you as an individual having freedom. It was how the law could move you, how you would have to move within the law. Now, what Jesus began to be talking about was the subject of the new birth, and it was actually, what he was talking about was a change of consciousness. Jesus knew and taught many times that the outward was not the important thing. They got into a discussion about what you're supposed to eat. Oh, it's amazing today. You know, everything is either bad for you or good for you. All kinds of things are bad, all kinds of things are good. What should we eat? What should we not eat? Should we touch that? Should we not touch it? Well, Jesus dealt with it with the people and said, he said to them, you know, it's not what comes into your mouth that corrupts you. And they were so, oh my, you know, just various things. You couldn't eat this on a certain day, couldn't eat that on a certain day. You always had to eat this on certain days. He said, that's not the problem. The problem is what's coming out of your mouth. Because you see, it's indicating what's inside. And therein lies the problem. He knew that the inner would sooner or later manifest into the outer. It just had to. It just had to. Now Jesus was speaking about the invisible when he said, and this is from the message, I mean, take it from me. It's not possible to see what I'm pointing to God's kingdom, unless you are spiritually minded. So he's saying to them, I'm talking about invisible stuff, and you're trying to interpret it into physical stuff. You know, there's all kinds of things. Just say baptism itself. There are hundreds of theories. Some say if you don't say Jesus when you're baptized, then you're not baptized. If you do, you're not. If you have to say Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, then you're not baptized. On it goes, on it goes, on it goes. You know, communion is to be given in just a certain way, and if it's not real. It isn't a sanctified thing. And on we go about those things. But in reality, Jesus was talking just from inner heart stuff. He was talking to them about the invisible. Nicodemus was a ruler in Israel, and he was probably, I would say probably was, some kind of a theologian or a big shot in the seminary where Jews pop out of. Nicodemus represents the purely material kind of thinking, because even though Jesus pointed this stuff to him, he didn't get it. He just couldn't get it. Have you ever been with people like that? You give them a simple thing, and they can't understand it. They just can't understand it. No matter how many times you describe it, how many times that you explain it over and over, they don't get it. Because their minds are closed on the subject, and you'll never get through to them until they're open. He, Nicodemus, passes up the obvious truth and gets caught up in things like money and houses and possessions. New Thought is inundated with it. I asked one of our people who attended the International New Thought Alliance this last time, and I said, what did you think about it? He thought for a minute and he said, you know, those people are wrapped up in material things. How to get rich, how to get money, how to get houses, how to get things. And those are all, you know, legitimate. Those are all legitimate. But he said that's all they think about, is how to get rich. Do you have some kind of a formula to make me get rich overnight? I tell people, no, I don't. I don't. It's going to take a change of consciousness. I remember a little old lady in the Birmingham church. One time we were talking about some rich people. It's good to talk about rich people, isn't it? Oh, that's nice. What you're really saying is, doggone, I should be rich. But anyhow, he talked about this lady, and she said, Harold, that takes a state of consciousness to be that. It takes a state. I've never forgotten that. She passed on long ago.